Then we go over here, and this is a cute little map of the state and regions. And you can pick regions like Minneapolis, St. Paul, so on and so forth. But I'm going to take the state just to make sure that nobody thinks I'm picking on just the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. I'll cover the whole state. And what we got here is June 2010 jobless estimated by place of work. So total private employment was 2,226,000. Now if I go down here, construction, I want you to look at this. In Minnesota, 92,000, but look at this. Minus 10% over a year ago. Now, here's your heavy highway. I want you to see this. That is your stimulus money. That's your bonding bill. It went up 16%, but then look at this, specialty trade contractors. Residential construction. Now, for all you people who think I'm union, I'm picking on a non-union. About 80%, I believe, of Minnesota's residential construction is, if I got my statistics right, is non-union. So even the non-union people are not exempt from an economic downturn in the construction industry because people aren't building homes no matter what you do. And so there's a drop right there. So all these drops, I'm just showing you, except what we talked about. There's the glitch. And that's direct stimulus money from the federal government. Highway civil engineering, roads, bridges, that type of thing. Now we're going to go down to the bottom. This is the best part. Oh, just to show you, in the construction industry, all construction in Minnesota is 3.4% of the population that's working.
Which, that's what, I just want to say one thing about that number, Tim. When you consider 3% is construction, it seems to me these bonding bills, which are $1 billion, are focused on 3% of the population. What about the other 97%?
Sue, you're wrong.
Okay, tell me why.
Here, because it's focused on the civil highway heavy engineering department, which is 0.7% of the population. The stimulus money isn't going to retail malls and office buildings.
What a surprise.
It's going to highway civil, which it should. Technically it should, because that's the responsibility of the state, is the
Correct.
roads and bridges and mass transit. But that stimulus is only affecting and employing 0.7% of the population. All those
my point exactly.
Right, it's less than 3%. It's down to less than 1% of the population is benefiting from the stimulus.
Right. My point exactly is, what about the rest of us?
Yeah.
And that's why I want to see you over in St. Paul, so you can make a business-friendly environment to 100% of the workers in Minnesota.
Now let's scroll down here to the last subject, and this is the best one of all. This is government in Minnesota.
Ah, yes.
Now I want you to look at these numbers. The total government employment in Minnesota is 16% of the population that's working. Now, I want to make it very clear to everybody out there in TV land. This is the direct hired employees. The guy, when you go get your driver's license tab, they say thank you very much and take your money and give you a license plate. This is not the people that are collecting government assistance of some sort or another. This is only the people who are directly hired by government. Now you can take that number and really expand it when you talk about even like unemployment, where we had extended unemployment. We are in a sense part of that government assistance. So we got federal government is 7,000 people in Minnesota work for the federal government. Yep. 13,600 work for the post office. The state government, this is state government. I didn't know it was this high. 95,692. State government education, we got 56,000 people working in education in Minnesota. Local government, get this, local government, local units of government, 299,244 people working in local government.
That's appalling. Would you please repeat those numbers?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The federal government in Minnesota.
Only in Minnesota?
Only in Minnesota, 37,258 people in June. The post office had 13,626. State government had 95,692. Local government, that's local, that's your city, your county, 299,244. Now all those people got jobs.
And benefits.
They're all generating revenue for themselves. They're all collecting benefits. And there is a purpose for government. I'm not saying government shouldn't exist. I'm saying there's a legitimate constitutional legal purpose for government. And that's what we should be funding. But we've gone way past that. And these people are making a lot of money. The average government employee makes more than the average private sector makes. So we the people are paying for this. Now we have a responsibility and obligation to pay for constitutional portion of it, but not what we have now. And that's one of the things I want to go into state capitol. If business realizes that we are in there and serious about cutting spending down to the constitutional requirement where everybody can afford government legally, then business will step back and start investing in Minnesota again, because they know we have the people here and the talent here. But the cost is just, and the regulation. And it's not, and I'm not saying we should have no regulation and no cost to business, because business is a vital part of the economy and they generate jobs and they also have a responsibility in the community. I'm just saying that what these numbers are indicating is that there's a consuming increase of government. And it has to be paid for. Government doesn't create its own jobs. It only takes from you and me and gives to somebody else. That's a whole different than private commerce. So that's 2%. They actually had a 2% growth in the last month of government in Minnesota, while all the other sectors are taking a bath except for leisure and entertainment. And then, let's see, the history here. I want to show you the history of government in Minnesota. This will be interesting.
PositivelyMinnesota.com.
You've got to go.
Website. Great.
You got to go. This is the detail behind all the hype you see in the news every month. They say, "Oh, unemployment's dropped. Isn't everything wonderful?" I want to take you to June. This goes back as far back as you want, but this is the federal. This is all government employees and government employment in Minnesota, and we're going to go back to 2000 right here. 415,000, 416, 420, 418, 414, 419, 421, 421, 426, 423, and 432. You notice how much government has increased in Minnesota in 1 year between 09 and 10 when everybody else was shedding jobs like you wouldn't believe in last year? Look at this. We actually increased government payrolls by, what is that, 9,000 jobs, roughly, 8,500, 9,000 jobs, while the rest of the state was shedding.
Now, they tell us that government had to do that or we would have gone into a recession. It would have been even worse. Do you buy that?
Nope. I buy it would have been worse, but it would have been also, yeah, it would have been worse. But what we're doing is we're putting off the day of judgment. That's basically what we're doing. We're kicking the can down the road, just like the legislatures did on House File 1 at the end of session. After session was over and they couldn't get their work done, plenty got together with the Democrats and cut a deal, put out House File 1, kicked it down the road, the problems. And they're huge.
Do you have House File 1 posted on your website?
No, but I should put a link to it.
I think you should put a link to that because I encourage everyone to read it.
I want to print it, but I'm afraid to find how many pages it has to it. But I'm going to, yeah, I'll put that on a link. That's a good idea.
Hundreds of pages.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the next meeting we're having, I believe we're going to be discussing some of this government stuff that's coming up, and I'm going to have, if it's our next, or I don't know which one of these two shows we're going to have, I'm going to bring it. It may be, I don't know, wherever it is, somewhere in here. I'm going to bring it so everybody can take a look at House File 1.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You're exactly right. They kicked the can down the road.
They kicked the can down the road.
The school accounting shifts. They raided funds that they never should have touched, and then they'll wonder why we're broke.
Funds were raided that are constitutionally dedicated. I mean, they just went through and it just took a scraper and just went across whatever was sticking up. They just, like a big scraper, and took everything off that was available.
They raided the closed landfill fund. They raided, I mean, things that people are going to be appalled
at. They raided every state government, every state department, every department in Minnesota. They raided all of them, just cleaned them out. And all they did was just push the problem down the road.
And the borrowing and accounting shifts from education were appalling. And in the meantime, they managed to find, this is House File 1, to end the legislative session last year. Right. They managed to find the money to do premarital counseling.
Oh, did they?
Read House File 1. It's eye-opening.
I read some of it and I stopped when
legislation that could not get passed during the year was stuffed into House File 1. Boom, it's law.
Well, like I told people last time, if you got a lawyer or you aren't a lawyer and you want to have some fun, file a lawsuit against the state on House File 1 because the Constitution is very clear. It's one subject, and the subject has to be in the title of the bill, and it can only be voted that way. You can't put a bunch of different bills unrelated to each other in a one package and vote on it. So technically unconstitutional. It would be held up by the Supreme Court of Minnesota. You want to have some fun, make Minnesota really go through the ringer, is to file a lawsuit against, I'm going to have people call me on this one, but
I wish people would.
That's the facts.
If you think back to the conceal and carry law, that's how that was repealed, because they had tucked other things into it, and it had to be passed again on the single subject rule.
I just want to clarify, it was a carry permit.
Exactly.
It's not
Thank
a conceal.
you. Correct.
You can hold it on, you can put your 6-shooter on your side hip there, and there's nothing illegal about it.
Exactly.
In Minnesota. Yeah.
Exactly.
Some states have conceal and carry, but we have a
carry
permit. Yes.
Correct.
So back to the little bit on the unemployment. That's just where we're at. We're a sinking ship, and we need people at state capitol to recognize that.
We do.
I was blowing my horn in 08 during the election in 08. And I got laughed off the stage. I said, we're $5 billion in the hole. And at the time, they said, oh, we're only $1 billion. Well, the November and February forecast came out, and we were $5 billion in the hole.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. And I don't have a PhD in economics. All I did is go out and look around the street and go, this is not good, and it's not getting any better.
And it's actually very simple math. If the state of Minnesota takes in $31 billion every biennium, they don't get to spend $37 billion every biennium. We're down to our last 5 minutes now. Do you want to touch a little bit on your personal situation?
Sure. Back to what I had said before, we are economically we're in a hurting straits, and we're being forced into bankruptcy, as a personal bankruptcy. And so I want to let everybody know that we are in the forefront, and they're not alone. Apparently, there's a lot of people out there, and I've spent 2 years doing everything I can to avoid this. But related to our business, and that's basically about most of this issue is about, is our business debt that we've been forced to declare bankruptcy and start over again. It's not a fun experience. But
how will it impact the campaign?
It'll impact me in helping me to really be an understanding that we can't keep doing what we're doing. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, stop spending. It's another thing to have gone through that process and know that if we don't as a state stop spending and get our act in order and retreat with the spending, that we are going to be bankrupt. In fact, well, like I said, they're already, Office of Management Budget already threw a flag up yesterday or the day before in their report saying that before the end of the year, they're going to be cash short, they're short of cash. You have no legal recourse right now to fix that. And so we need people in there that understand that. We don't need people with their head in the clouds who are going, oh, we can always tax more. Or what's the revenue generate? What's the fancy word for taxation?
Yes, revenue generating.
Revenue generating.
Revenue raisers.
Revenue raisers or whatever. We need people that are going to go in there and say, we've got to stop. We don't have a choice anymore. It's either over the cliff or we're going to have to stop. And so I want to go down. We need people like me down there that understand it, have been there. And it's painful. It's not fun. There's nothing going to be fun about solving this $10 billion deficit. It wasn't fun this last time, and they didn't even solve it. They just kicked the problems down the road for 2 more years. So we got people that's going to say no. And that's just, and I'm not afraid, I'm not going to be afraid to say no. We have to say no.
How refreshing.
For our kids, for ourselves, and for our state. So.
Okay, so give us, we're down to our last couple minutes now. Why should the viewers vote for you?
Because I'm the best candidate.
Obviously.
Yeah, no.
If anyone's been watching the show.
For the fun people live in our district, you got the unique opportunity of having 2 points of view. Either it's constitutional, representative republic, and liberty. You take personal responsibility for yourself, and if you have to declare bankruptcy, then you pay the price and go along with it. If you can make it work, great. Or you have a government-minded individual who thinks the government, or believes the government from cradle to grave is responsible and has the authority over your life, how you conduct yourself and what you can and can't do, and knows what's best for you. Believes in universal health care, doesn't believe in private property rights, doesn't believe in gun ownership, and so on. I go down the list. We do agree on one thing, and that's that the federal No Child Left Behind should be eliminated. That's the one thing that her and I agree on totally. Everything else we're in polar opposites on. So you got a choice in this district, which is good for people. Sometimes the candidates are really close, you can't tell, you know, they promise the world to each other. I go out and I don't promise anybody anything but your liberty and your money back. That's it. Constitutional government that you can afford, that you're supposed to be responsible for. And that's all I'm promising.
And what's your website?
TimUtesForHouse.com.
Thank you for a wonderful interview.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Best of luck.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. See you in a couple weeks.
Count on it.
All right.